Cheating_stories. My husband got himself a girlfriend while I was on holiday. I've been perusing these cheating subreddit groups for months now, and have been wanting to write this on Reddit since this has happened to me, but I don't know how to make this into something shorter than a novel. But here's my story. I'm in my 40s. My common-law husband is early 50s. We are fit and take good physical care of ourselves. We've been together for 9 years and have lived in many different countries around the world. We met in a foreign country where we lived as well. 2 years ago, we had an unplanned child that has changed everything, as they do. We both love our toddler very much. Soon, I realized that hubby wasn't responsible enough with money to be able to provide for us where we weren't living check to check. And yes, he makes more than enough. There were some times where we might have needed to cut our spending down for a slow month, but it's only me who made those sacrifices. As a full-time stay-at-home mom, I soon would start to feel like a fool having to ask for every dollar and having to explain where it all went. Sometimes he was happy to give me the money to get the basic needs for me and his daughter, but most times he would make a cruel joke, thinking it was funny. In fact, a friend recently commented on it and asked if he was always like this. I said, wow, I didn't think anyone noticed. I thought it was just me, so it did validate my feelings. I'm a very frugal person. I don't buy anything for myself. Everything is just food and gas, albeit expensive. In 2020, I had saved up some cash from my bartending job and I made the decision to invest in nearly a whole Bitcoin for our child's future. I begged him not to touch it, but every time he brought it up to someone, he bragged about trading it. He was the only one with the access to it. He promised me repeatedly that he wouldn't touch or trade that money. And within less than a year, all of it was gone. If my almost Bitcoin hadn't been traded by him, well, you do the math. So, I found myself raising 2 children. Not good for the sex life. Not good for anything. Don't want to say I didn't have a share in the disintegration of our relationship, because obviously that's 50-50ish, but I began to hate and resent him. He lied to me several times about the smallest, stupidest stuff, including that money, and well, if he can lie so easily about that stuff, what else? As time went on, I would get more and more angry with the dynamics of our life, taking out my anger on him and vice versa. Not a good look. I soon went from this happy and free-go-lucky girl to an angry, negative person. But not once throughout this all did I ever feel he stepped out. He always made me feel loved and desired. I never would cheat on him or even entertain it. This year has been particularly rough as we currently live in a country where drugs are cheap, really good and easy to get. He didn't come home for a few days over New Year's and explained it like, what? I just want to party. Like it was ridiculous that I would even ask him where he was, or how perfectly normal to leave your wife and child and go party for a few nights and not come home. I would have left at this point, but I was financially dependent on this human in a foreign country which I'm a resident of. We have a kid, and sometimes you just beat a dead horse and try and work on stuff you know. One night during one of the weddings I was at while out of town, he went AWOL. I didn't think anything of it because I thought he was jealous that I was at the wedding of our friends. But no, that wasn't the case. Turns out he met a new girl at his job that night, and was funking her a few hours later, in my car in the parking lot. All the while, my good friend was babysitting our child. She apparently didn't know anything, but I don't believe her. Fast forward a week later, still on my trip, and hubby sends me a nude for the first time ever. When I asked him about it, he immediately unsent it and said, oh, I'm embarrassed. I then asked him who the lucky girl was. Jokingly, I flew home a few days later. We had our usual fight. On the way home, during this argument, we broke up like we always do. We arrived home and continued living life like we did before I left. In our house together, we cooked meals together and had boink once without protection. It was the same like every other day. He kept hugging me, being affectionate every day. Does this sound like we're broken up to you? Sure didn't to me. During this time, he also told me about this house-sitting job he was offered from his married clients, and it came with a car. I thought this is really strange because who loans their house and car to people they hardly know? A few days later, my friend asked me how I was doing with the breakup. I'm like, what? Breakup? What? This was how I found out we actually broke up. The kicker was the response from my husband. I messaged him and said we're broken up. He kind of laughed and said, how could you not know, like in complete disbelief. Like I would continue to sleep with him if I knew we were broke up? Hardly. And stay and cook in my house? Hell no. He completely took advantage of me, used me and disrespected me. Trying to have the best of both worlds. Just utter disgust. So, at this point, he started exclusively sleeping at this house sit and had been driving around this car for a few days. I just knew that something was off about this house and the car, but I couldn't find any more information. I'm out for coffee with the same friend who asked me about the breakup, and she asks if my husband was leaving the next day to go to work. I said no. It was next week. She said, oh, that's not what he said. The next day my husband told me he was leaving the following morning to go work out of town 2 hours from here, and that it was an emergency that he had to be there the next day. This wasn't unusual because he worked there before, but the timing was a bit off. For him to need to go right away, how he kept saying he needed space, which he just had for weeks of, as I was away. I'm like, what about the cake? The little party we had planned? He said, no, I don't want to celebrate my birthday this year. I thought that was really strange because he loves to be admired and to be the center of attention. I also told him giving me 12 hours notice before leaving town for a week was disrespectful, and he needed to be more conscious of time. He literally almost left without giving us any money to live for the week. My car was empty of gas, and we needed groceries. He made me beg and cry for $60, which would have only filled up my tank. It wasn't until I threatened to go into town and asked to borrow money from his friends that he whipped around and graciously gave me another $40. I do want to add I live in one of the most expensive countries in the world, but it wasn't like this when I moved here 5 years ago. $100 does not go far filling up a car with gas and groceries for the week for two. Never mind if there was an emergency. So I budgeted my $100, put $10 in the car, didn't drive anywhere I didn't have to for the week, got the bare minimum for groceries, and saved the rest in case there was an emergency. After he left that night, I found out, rather luckily and accidentally, that he's not actually in the town where he says he's working, but in the big city where the airport is. When I ask him where he is, he doesn't answer me till the next day, and replies with in bed, which in all actuality was true. But he was really in bed with his new girlfriend, who had just flown back in to see him for the week. She lives in a different country and owns the house here where hubby is staying at. This girl is also married with 3 children, and to different baby daddies, but I have no ill will towards her. She only believes what my convincing husband told her. So he keeps up his little facade to me, pretending he's working when he's just wanting and dining with her, eating out, staying at Airbnbs. Meanwhile, I had to beg for $100. He pretends that the place he's staying at has terrible Wi-Fi, and he can't video call a. We've never not video called, no matter how shitty it's been, especially now that we have a kid. After a week of limited communication, probably the least we've ever had, he suddenly decides to come home, at night, which was strange. Turns out he dropped his new girlfriend off at the airport and drove home. Next evening he spends at our house. Meanwhile, I still don't know anything other than that we are broken up. I went to bed early that night, and woke up before midnight for a bathroom break. I went to see if he was in the bedroom with the child, and there he was sleeping. Then I noticed his phone sitting there, just staring at me. The voice said, "Look at me." I tried several times to tell the voice to shut up, because why wouldn't I believe everything hubby's telling me, but the voice kept insisting. So I grabbed the phone. I do want to say that this is the first time in our entire relationship that I felt inclined to pick up his phone and actually snoop. I got about 20 minutes into it before he woke up and realized that I had it. The pictures and messages I found in those 20 minutes had completely altered my life. Not only was it his new girlfriend, it was several women on the go, and he was texting them the same exact messages, just copying and pasting. On top of that, he was sending them pictures of him with our kid, listening to them all tell them what a good daddy he was. He also admitted to sleeping with someone else before his new girlfriend too. I got to read all the dirty, nasty messages they were exchanging for the past month, pictures included. The thing is, I felt absolutely nothing seeing him kiss and hug another girl, which really made this a whole lot easier in that aspect of I don't have to worrying about my feelings. I also found out he cheated on me quite early on in our relationship when it was really good, and I think that's probably what hurt the most. After he busted me with his phone, I wish I thought to change his passcode on him, cause that would have really messed him up. He tried to get mad at me for having the audacity to go through it, like I violated him or something. LOL. Is that your defense? He just kept repeating over and over, but I didn't cheat. But I didn't cheat. Like, dude, I just read your phone, come on. The most satisfying part was emptying his drawer of clothes and throwing it at him like they do in the movies. Now, at my age, I have to go in for an STD test. Fast forward to now. We haven't talked about a thing. He's hardly had any remorse at all. and is only admitted to what I know. So every day I have to see or hear about him, and it's not helping the healing process. His girlfriend's house is 5 minutes from our house, and he comes and goes as he pleases to mine, completely ignoring my boundaries and disrespecting me. He has completely absolved himself from all responsibilities, leaving me with the house, and the dogs, and everything that comes with taking care of that on top of being a full-time mom. I don't have money for daycare or babysitters either, so I don't get a spare moment unless he has her. I'm trying to start working again, but I'm finding a lot of obstacles, and one of them is babysitting. I don't have a lot of friends here, and everyone who lives here is quite busy and has their own children, or are working full-time, so friends and family taking my child is not an option. I don't really have support here. I don't actually have support in my home country either. The only support I have is probably in the country I was just in at, but seeing as I just came back from there, I don't have any cash left. I am staying here to allow him to try and be a good father. If I don't try, I will never be able to look my daughter in the eye and say I tried everything, but if history repeats itself as it already has started to do, he will not be a present father, nor will he be supporting us for very much longer. The irony of this all is that he did the exact same thing to his ex-wife when we met. I'm inclined to believe that hubby and his ex-wife weren't broken up when we met like he said. I know there's been a lot of support for survivors of hurtful people here, and I'm hoping some of you can share your experience and give me some advice, especially with sharing the child. I've literally spent 2 weeks trying to compose this thing, and I hope I can get something from it. I'm having trouble co-parenting with him because I feel like I haven't had a moment to heal from this. I start work again in a few weeks. I'm just praying that this will give me the time, the space, and the money I need to get ahead. As of right now, he is still supporting us, still paying for the house that we live in. The more I write this out, the more I realize what a shitty position I'm in. He does the shitty thing and breaks up our family, but gets to go out and be irresponsible until he feels like he wants to be a parent and sees his kid. Meanwhile, I'm being the responsible adult and raising her right. I'm doing all the things, and then when daddy swoops in, he's the hero. One more shitty thing, one of our closest mutual friends, here in this foreign country, died a few days ago, and we have been thrust into this weird place because of this. It's been really awkward and hard, because we're all grieving together,